Razabani for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. I'm delighted to have on Zoom with me in the early hours of New Zealand, Mr. Kevin Barry. Kevin, firstly, how are we doing?
Raz, I'm doing great, my friend. And it's always a pleasure to be on IFL with you, my mate.
Always a pleasure. Likewise, likewise. Kev, firstly, I'll start off by saying congratulations on the victory on Saturday night. Have you finished it? Is the hangover still there, or are you still recovering?
No, it's,
From the
we've
celebrations, from the celebration.
the celebrations we're talking about. We've actually, I had a few with Joe and Mr. Higgins yesterday. We had a team gathering that turned into a lot of fun. And like it's been a stressful 5 months for us, really. You know, the fight was scheduled for December 12th, and then we had a break for Christmas, and Joe had some surgery, and Junior had some surgery, and then we're able to get this date on February 27th. And you know, long story short, I've been here in New Zealand for 5 months, and it's time to go home. But we had fun yesterday. Like, we got the W. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't Joe's best work, but it was, mate, styles make fights. And you had one guy who was trying to survive, and you had another who had to be the aggressor the whole fight. And it's ideally, it's not a style that Joe looks good against. It takes me back to the Hughie Fury fight in Manchester, where Hughie moved backwards for 12 rounds and Joe had to become the aggressor and take the fight to him. Very similar scenario.
Yeah, what was the kind of, obviously you knew Far well, you've obviously studied him, they've got history through the amateurs as well. What was kind of the game plan, knowing what Far's style is like going into the fight?
Well, look, we knew that he was going to move away, so you know it was important that our first step was always a rather big step. You know, speaking to Joe afterwards, you know, not only was he taking one big step, he was taking two and three, and quite often he'd be smothering himself and finding himself, you know, chest to chest with Junior. And Junior was happy just to stay there and lean all over him and tie him up. And, you know, let's remember, we're in the middle of a pandemic. All the officials were from this country. You know, I thought John Conway, you know, he did the best job that he could probably do, the referee, but I would have liked to have seen less holding and more warnings. Because when Far was able to throw a punch and then hold, very, very old Klitschko-like, it made for a very boring part of the fight. And Joe was getting a little frustrated. You could see it in his face, you know, but he needed to give himself a little bit more room. I thought one thing that we had worked on. We knew that Junior would try and use his size and wait to lay on Joe. And every time he did, Joe worked really good to the body. And that's something that was a big plus for me in the fight. You know, he tore his body up right from the first round.
You mentioned there, and I was going to ask you about Far's tactics, because it seemed like he was holding a lot, like you mentioned, like Klitschko, and there wasn't enough warnings. But on the other hand, when you fought here in the UK with Anthony Joshua, there wasn't a lot of holding, but there was a lot more of the referee coming in between quite quickly.
Yes.
So was that frustrating for you as well? What were your instructions to Joe when he was coming back into the corner?
Well, to try to give himself a little bit more room. Not to get caught standing in front for as long as he was. You know, I was trying to get him to move off the angles a little more. But, you know, Joe, because he was forced to be the aggressor, found himself following Far around the ring. And when he was doing that, he was spending too much time standing in front of him.
In terms of Joe's inactivity, do you feel like that year out didn't also help? We know Joe fought just before the pandemic in February last year. Had he fought in December, would have been okay, because obviously we had 7-8 months in between, or 8-9 months in between rather. But do you feel like that year didn't also help being out for a period of time?
look, it's easy to say, to blame inactivity. And sure, we hadn't fought for a year. But let's remember, Junior hadn't fought for 15 months. So, like, it wasn't like, he was coming off a bunch of recent fights. One thing that is very, very obvious to both David Higgins and myself is that we have to get Joe busier. We have to get him in consistent fights. And, we're looking right at the moment of getting him straight back into the ring. I think when we look at early in Joe's career, when he was fighting in 2014, 15, and 16, he had 5 fights a year. And that was, I think, the best Joseph Parker we've seen when he was active. So we need to try to do everything in our power to get him back into the ring smartly.
I know you're dying to go back home to Las Vegas, but how was it being able to come back home to New Zealand and have Joe fight again?
Well, mate, it was great being here, especially in the middle of a pandemic when the rest of the world was crazy. But look, we kept things pretty tight in Vegas. Like, no members of my family got sick. No one in my gym got sick. We have very strict protocols, and it was tough being away from my family for 5 months. And I'm looking forward to getting back home. But look, hey, it was great being here. It was great having the freedom, being here for a New Zealand summer. There's a lot of activity on we've got the America's Cup yachting here. We've got rugby. We've got cricket. Things are buzzing here at the moment. In saying that, I'm not sure whether you know, but during the Saturday night boxing promotion, we got a message from the Prime Minister that the country Auckland was being shut down. And at one stage, it was being shut down at midnight, and it was 9 o'clock, and I was wrapping Joe's hands, and David Higgins come in, and he says, Kev, he said, I'm going to put Joe on at 10. I'm going to cancel the last 2 fights on the card. Don't forget, we're doing live TV. I'm going to cancel the last 2 fights. I'm going to put Joe on at 10 o'clock. I said, Dave, it's going to take me 45 minutes to wrap his hands. And then it was actually, it was reported wrong by TVNZ. They didn't actually shut down until 6 a.m. and we were able to walk at our scheduled time at 11 o'clock. But there was a little bit of panic for a minute or two.
I did read about that, but am I right in thinking that the country went into lockdown because of one new COVID? Yes. Someone was positive, just that one case.
One case, one person.
And how long was that lockdown for?
But at the moment, 7 days.
Wow. That's the difference between New Zealand and the rest of the world.
Yes. Well, they're very, very protective. And you can't fault them for it because they've done a very good job. No, but it's just very, very tough on the economy. There's a lot of facets of it that are really hurting at the moment.
Kev, you said you want Joe out regular, you want him out frequently. Ideally, how much time are you going to give him off before he needs to come back to Las Vegas or wherever you're going to have your camp?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're in the final negotiations at the moment for Joe's next fight, and Mr. Higgins has had several conversations with Eddie recently. You've all read and you've all heard that Chisora Parker is a done deal. It's a fight that I know they like. It's a fight that we like. I like the fact that we'll have somebody that we won't have to go looking for. He'll be right there in Joe's face, which will help us a lot more than having to chase after somebody. And as I mentioned to you before, we want to keep Joe active. So we're just finalizing that date at the moment, and then we'll have to work out all the logistics of how this camp's going to work.
Is he the right fight? Is Derek Chisora the right fight for Joe at this time in his career?
Well, I think so. I think it's a fight that we spend a lot of time thinking about and marketing and promoting back in 2019, but of course before the infamous spider bite. There's there's plenty of lead up between the two of them. As we know, Derek's got a fresh mouth. I think it's a perfect fight for us.
When you say it's a done deal, does that mean that both camps have agreed and subject to contract signing, or have contracts already been signed?
It's very close. I think both teams have agreed on the fight, and it's just securing where that fight's going to be on and exactly what date.
And in terms of the future, we know the WBO may call for, or are going to call for, purse bids between Usyk and Joyce now,
Yes.
for that mandatory
Right.
talk. So in terms of the plan and the map for Joe, okay, Chisora next, but have you looked beyond that on which route
No.
you want to take?
Chisora's a tough dude. We've got to beat him down before we can even think about anyone else. If we don't get past Chisora, then it's pointless us putting plans in place for anyone else. But Derek's a gatekeeper. He's the gatekeeper at the highest level. So we need to look great against him. And I think we have a great fan base in the UK. I believe our team is liked in the UK. Joe is liked. Derek has a very good following there. I think all the ingredients are there for a big fight.
In terms of, obviously, we're still in a lockdown here, and we're not looking like to have any spectators back in our venues just yet. So that fight looks like it's going to be behind closed doors.
Right.
Does that impact any of the fighters, do you think?
I think it would be fair to say that most fighters want to fight in front of a crowd. And I think it's very unfortunate, but it's either you fight in front of no crowd or you don't fight at all. So I think, we just have to deal with the situations that we're placed in.
Did you see Derek's tweet today?
No, I haven't. I saw his little video over the weekend that was hilarious. We were all laughing about it yesterday.
So he tweeted the following today. I think he made an error in terms of location. He said, "The fight in Australia sent me to sleep. 119, 11109 in terms of the scorecard. You robbed Hugh Fury, ran against Joshua, and gassed out against Dylan. Bitched out of a UK fight in 2019. Come to the UK, or you too scared you'll eat a shot again. Chicken." With a chicken in the
He's priceless, isn't he?
He is. But are you kind of surprised, Kev, in terms of how long Derek has kind of? It looks like he's had a second wind in his career.
Yeah. Oh no, he really has. And good on him.
And it seems like
he's been in some exciting fights in the last 3 years. This will be another exciting fight until we knock his old ass out.
Kev, always a pleasure catching up with you. I'll leave the mic with you. Is there a message for Derek Chisora if he's watching?
Derek, keep training, my man. Keep working. Get those old bones working. We're coming for you. Looking forward to being there. I'm sure it's going to be tons of fun. I'm sure that Mr. Hay will make sure it's lots of fun.
No, absolutely, and we look forward to it. And welcoming Joe back to the UK is always going to be fun. Kev, always a pleasure catching up with you. I appreciate you jumping on today with me. I know I've been harassing for the last couple of days as well. So apologies as well for that.
All good, Raz. Always a pleasure, mate. And all the best to the IFL listeners and viewers.
Kevin Barry, IFL TV, thank you very much.
Take care, brother.